It ain't Bernie. It is us.
If we come together, we will win.
People always say, oh, you're being too vocal.
Hey, Bernie, you don't have to yell.
I don't feel I'm being vocal enough. We are not being vocal enough. When is enough enough?
He sounds very, very shouty.
Louder. Yeah, we gotta get louder. How many kids are gonna have to make this sacrifice and die? How can you sleep at night knowing that kids can't afford insulin? How is that possible?
It's not right.
Perhaps the most dismaying thing about supporting the progressive movement, which Bernie Sanders uniquely represents among 2020 candidates, is the disconnect between how everyday Americans see him and how he is portrayed by many members of the mainstream media.
Basically, at this point, if you are still supporting Sanders as opposed to Warren, it's kind of showing your sexism.
Whereas pundit Emily Tish Sussman, daughter of 2 billionaire parents and erstwhile MSNBC pundit, recently opined that anyone who would choose Bernie Sanders over certain female progressives must be sexist, many voters are comforted by Bernie's longstanding commitment to women's equality, long before it was the party line to do so. In 1972, months before Roe v. Wade created a constitutional right to have an abortion, Bernie Sanders said that abortion is up to a woman's conscience, not the government. Quote, "It strikes me as incredible that politicians think that they have the right to tell a woman what she can or cannot do with her body," Sanders told the Bennington Banner. This is especially true in Vermont, where we have a legislature which is almost completely dominated by men. That was 1972. Wealthy women like Emily Sussman might not be sensitive to the issues that drive everyday working women to support Bernie Sanders more than any other candidate. But to us, the reasons are clear. Working women don't just need a right to choose, but the means to do so. In the last election cycle, the female candidate picked a VP, someone a heartbeat away from the presidency, who supported the Hyde Amendment, which prevents federal funding for abortion services and makes it difficult for poor women to afford reproductive care. The Medicare for All bill, which Bernie wrote and has championed for the last 4 years, would end the Hyde Amendment and make reproductive services completely free. Wealthy pundits might be indifferent to the fact that women comprise the majority of minimum wage workers, that Medicare for All will cover gender affirmation surgery for trans women, that housing instability is a factor driving the high maternal mortality rate for Black women, and that only Bernie has a plan to guarantee housing as a human right. But here we are. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which a person seeks to sow seeds of doubt in people, making them question their own memory, perception, and sanity. I think Matt Orfalea's video, which opened this podcast, has garnered over 6 million views to date because it exposes the gap between our reality and the distortion advanced by out-of-touch pundits. It validates what we know to be true and calls out bad actors for gaslighting us to within an inch of our sanity. I had an opportunity to talk to Matt Orfalea when he stopped by HQ on Monday, and I asked him, why did you do this?
Obviously, I'm a fan of Bernie Sanders and noticed, like every other fan of Bernie Sanders, the mistreatment that he receives in the media, the unfounded attacks. I've made probably a dozen videos for Bernie Sanders, if you add up the ones from 2016. I was working on another one, specifically about how MSNBC and their spin. The project was like 5 ways that MSNBC is anti-Bernie Sanders. And as I was working on that project, I had also been working on another project where I had that music. And just to, you just have these coincidences like that. I just realized midway through that my original vision for the project that this shouldn't be a listicle video. This shouldn't be another listicle video. It could be more powerful to do in another way.
So what's your reaction been to all of this?
I mean, I friggin' loved it. I mean, I had, like, my friend thought I was nuts. I was like dancing in the middle of the night. Like, from Sean King, obviously, like, wow, you couldn't, I mean, I was totally honored for anybody to say, like that kind of positive stuff about your work. And, I knew it had potential. It really worked out. And it worked out because Sean King and, a lot of other people with big followings, obviously I don't have a big following, but everyone with these, the big followings who are fans of Sanders, they pushed it. They did a great job pushing it, and that made it go viral. But I'll tell you, probably the favorite thing I see in some of these retweets is the people who are saying, I showed this to my husband, I showed this to my, parents, and now they're voting Bernie Sanders. Or I've even seen people, they said, I was thinking about another candidate, but now I'm sure I'm voting Bernie Sanders. And that to me was like, that was success, Yeah,
well, we'll have to make sure to put the link to your video in our show notes, and everyone who listens to this podcast should absolutely send this to at least one person in their lives who isn't already aboard the Sanders train. Thank you so much for putting in the work and doing that video. I know it's a really time-intensive process, and it's that kind of grassroots effort that really is a sign of this campaign, really essential to our success, and I just really appreciate it.
You're so very welcome. And can I just say, it absolutely is a part of the grassroots effort. People on the ground, knocking doors, talking to people, that's probably the most important thing, actually speaking to people in person. But if you've got some just basic editing skills, everyone's got, Windows Movie Maker or iMovie on their computer nowadays. That's another way to contribute. And it makes a huge difference. And it's necessary because the mainstream media we know is against Sanders. It's totally overall against his campaign. Yeah. And the thing is, but things are different now. We are the media now, thanks to the internet and easily accessible, video editing tools and such. So yeah, since we're the media, let's act like it. Let's put ourselves to work and let's get Bernie Sanders elected.
I am so grateful to be part of this progressive community. Let's continue to validate each other, to hold each other up, and to make visible the problems experienced by everyday working Americans so that together we can solve them. After all, Bernie has a revolution for that.